Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Jay Acharya, CEO of Aspire Consulting and Training Limited, and this is the Becoming the Leader in You podcast. In every episode, I'll be talking to guests about their leadership stories, both personal and professional, stories of their inspirations, their successes, and of course, challenges and how they overcame them. Before we go any further, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And as well as being on YouTube, you can listen to us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and all the other podcast stations. My guest today is an award-winning performance development consultant specializing in sales, service, and leadership. She spent 18 years in some seriously high-pressure environments, including Stripe, VMware, App Dynamics, and PwC. So she knows a thing or two about performance and why it actually matters. She's the founder of Creating Lightbulb Moments, which sounds gentle, but her work is all about getting real commercial results, not just nice ideas on flip charts. She was named Sales Coach of the Year for 2025 and recognized as a thought leader. She sits right at the intersection of human behavior and business performance, basically where most organizations want to be. She became a leader at 23 before anyone actually explained what it meant. She's a published thinker, speaker, and coach, and her mission is simple: raise the standard of leadership in every room she walks into. So there's no pressure on any of us. Please welcome Samantha Lancashire of Creating Lightbulb Moments. So Sam, hello, welcome, and thank you for coming on Becoming the Leader in You podcast.
It is absolutely great to be here, Jay. I'm really excited to chat with you today and to share and also hear from you as well as we go through all about becoming the leader.
Fantastic, thank you. So we've got about half an hour, 40 minutes, and I know we've spoken before, and we spoke for a long time, and we might go off on tangents. That's, we'll try and keep it on track. But my first question to you is about you saying that you became a leader at 23, and it's about, well, tell me briefly how that came about.
So at the time, I was sort of in almost like, I wasn't in my infancy in my career because I'd actually been working in a family business. I grew up in a family business in hospitality. It was still fairly early doors. And so I was working in sales in the telco industry, actually in retail. And just by being a top performer and almost showing those leadership qualities, stepping up, raising, having a hand raised and all that kind of stuff, I was identified for a leadership role. Right. Which was sounding amazing. And for most part it was. But given the pace of the industry at the time, which was very fast paced, it was still in its infancy. So there was a lot of changes, the pressure with it being in sales and targets, and me having no leadership experience at the time, it was a rocky roller coaster. Let's put it that way.
So you were thrown at the deep end.
Very much so. And so when I think about becoming the leader and sort of embodying that, as I've moved from my career, what I try and think of is I try and become the leader that I needed when I was 23, because I needed sort of like somebody to look up to and somebody to sort of almost mentor me in the new role as a leader myself. Right. And because of the pace, didn't really get it. It was kind of handed the responsibility, the team, the targets, and expected to get on with it. And sort of, I learned really quickly by watching and observing others and reflecting in myself what was working, what wasn't working. Was it the best way? Probably not. But did we get results eventually?
Okay. And that's the key thing. And I think a lot of people who are thrown at the deep end, they do aim to achieve those results, but at sometimes a cost to their sanity, to their mental well-being, to the other people around them. So it's interesting to hear that. And how would you say you have changed from the age of 23 to where you are now, only 2 years later? How much do you think you've changed from the person who's 23 to who you are today?
I think a lot. I mean, I do a lot of work around personality preferences and psychometrics, and a lot of that is rooted in Jungian psychology. And when I think about the fundamentals of that, the principles are often like nurture versus nature, right? So that whole what you were born with and your surroundings and what you've, learned from around you. And I think that's where the changes have taken place for me.
Yeah.
Those sort of learned lessons, the behaviors that I've observed that were really good. And also, I think helping myself hold myself in as high regard as maybe I've held other people in my career. Because again, when we're young, we're still learning, and we're maybe not quite there yet. And sometimes we berate ourselves or be a little bit tough on ourselves and push even harder. So now the motivation comes from a different place, but also the way that I think about how I show up and then how I help others do the same in their world. That has definitely changed for me. And that's based on my surroundings for sure.
Excellent. Before we go into telling me about your organization, about your company, one of the things that I said about you, which was about, where is it? It's about raising the standards of leadership in every room you walk into. What does that mean?
For me, it's about modeling the right behaviors. So things like not the poster consistency around motivation and leadership and all that.
Yeah.
Almost like, sometimes you'd be in an organization and you'd read the mission statement and values, but they were something that lived on the internet or a Notion page and not actually lived in the day-to-day behaviors. Yeah. So for me, that's things like the basics. How you present yourself, how you treat others when you're with them. And then other things like being supportive and really listening. Good leaders ask great questions and then they listen with intent.
That's right, yeah.
To sort of understand and not necessarily respond. So that's something that I really model and I hold true. And also working with a real value-based system. Again, that's something that's very close to my heart. So in my own business now, I try and work with aligned people and organizations where there's a values match. Whereas sometimes when we're in corporate, we don't always get that luxury and we have to kind of make the best of that situation. So for me, those are some of the things that leadership means. The basics, of course, and how we treat others, but also like what we do when we engage and what that looks like to other people and how that impacts them. Like one of my little sort of slogans is leave people better than I found them. And I think that's a really good quality to focus on when you're considering what good leadership looks like.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm just going to go back to raising the standards to the rooms that you walk into. Someone said to me quite some time ago, and they were talking about what I need to sort of lift up my leadership qualities. And they said, in a room full of people, have them all looking for you, looking for your energy, looking for your inspirational talks. And I had to ask the question, what do you mean by look for me and look for my inspirational talks? And she actually turned around and said, it's because that's what I see in you when I talk to you. And I was blown away because, walking into a room, I do walk into the room like I own it. Honestly, that's my ego. But it's nice to see people making their way to you, and that kind of like puts you on a pedestal. But it also at the same time, it's from a leadership perspective, you think that's great, but at the same time, I want to come to you because I want to have conversations with you, and I don't want that ego to step in the way. But let's get on to creating light bulb moments. Tell me briefly what creating light bulb moments is, because it does sound like a really nice light sort of environment to work in. But obviously the work that you're doing is not nice and fluffy.
Right. So when I set up on my own, I didn't want to be just a trainer or just a coach because I have both of those hats that I can wear. I also do mentoring as well. So I looked at the bigger picture and I was like, what is it exactly that I do? They're just kind of titles. And I'm like, I develop people, I develop performance, I help them with productivity. So I'm like, so that's a little bit different to just doing training or coaching.
Sure.
So then I started to think about if I was going to be calling myself a performance development consultant or consultancy, what would be a good name? And a lot of consultants call their organization their name. So it could be Joe Blogs Consulting or Joe Blogs Coaching, right? You've probably
he's on a podcast in 2 weeks, by the way.
Right. And for me, what I do is not about me, it's about other people. So I went and reflected on some of the things that folks had said to me when I developed them in my corporate world. And often they turn around and said, I had a light bulb moment. Like, it was so clear by the time we got to the end, or by the time we did the putting it into practice in my own world, or by when we followed up with our coaching, when you asked me that tough question, I had a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what it needs to be, because
Absolutely.
that's what I do. So I'm not a trainer, I'm not a coach, I'm not a mentor. I'm kind of like a beautiful blend of all three, that when I work with teams and individuals, I think, how can I help them create the light bulb moments they need to move the needle on what matters to them? So it's not about training and learning outcomes, and you'll know this being a learning practitioner. It's more about, what are we looking to do, or what are we looking to do differently that really makes an impact?
Tell me, Sam, we talk about people who have been our motivation, people who have been the ones that have elevated you or given you that inspiration. Who would you say has been the most inspirational? What moment might have been the most inspirational to you to make you the person that you are today, that your clients see?
It's probably like, there's probably two sides to this coin. So if I think about me in the work environment, quite often it's the bad leaders who've made me think, this is kind of like going to shape me for the future. And let me explain. I've had so many managers who, over the years, because I've worked a lot in tech, and they've been technically brilliant, or they've been operationally brilliant.
Yeah.
But when I think about the emotional connection and the human connection, they've probably been a little bit absent on that part, or not as brilliant as some of the other areas that they work in. And so sometimes performance has been prioritized, let's say, over the people element. And for me, that kind of made me think, when I was a leader, I don't want my team to ever feel like that. And likewise, now I develop leaders, I kind of say the same. I ask them to reflect on moments in their career, and you know, what was pivotal for them, be it good, bad, and then maybe a little bit ugly.
Yeah.
So sometimes, if I think of like part of my story, it's focusing on, I've learned not to do that. And I've learned taken the good from them, that, you know, operationally they were brilliant. So like, you need to know your numbers, and, you know, you need to create accountability. But on the people side, where maybe that was missing, and it's not been so good, it's like, has the quest for accountability turned into micromanagement? And if so, you lost the people element. And so are you managing, you know, by the fact that you know, you must do what I say, or are you sort of creating a leadership where people want to follow you and get involved? So that's probably the first side. On a more personal note, the person that's most inspired me to be a good leader is my nana. So yes. So coming from the Wirral, and my family, a lot of them being from Liverpool, so good Scousers.
The accent does not show at all.
That's because I've lived in Ireland for quite some time. So it's a little bit muted at this stage. And plus traveling with cultures where their first language isn't English, I would never be able to run sessions if I spoke true Scouse, because they wouldn't understand me. So when I think of my nana, I think of her as like, you know, the head of the household.
The matriarch.
Absolutely. 5 children. You know, every one of their child has between 2 and 4 of their own children. So, you know, quite a big family. But for her, not only did she lead that, and she supported like my granddad, Pop, when he was alive, she actually always had her own job, which, if you think back, wasn't always a thing, was it?
No.
And she used to have roles of responsibility, and she used to kind of manage in retail. And again, when I think about that, she always used to sort of go between the two in terms of what good looked like at home and what good looked like at work. And she'd always bring that people aspect into it, in terms of like honesty and humility and fairness as well. And obviously, like having 5 children and all those grandchildren, they always say, oh, we don't have favorites.
Yeah.
She used to say that, she was like, it just wouldn't be fair. But the same would apply at work. So for me, I like to bring sort of that, and she's passed away now, so the memory of that, of her sort of like spirit and approach to, and hard work as well. And
right.
Hard work doesn't have to be difficult. It just means that you're doing your best, is what she always say.
Exactly. So how do your clients see that? How do your clients see what your nana gave to you?
I think they see it in terms of like how I want to partner with them. Okay. So one of the things that I experienced when I was in-house in L&D, or in-house in sales enablement, is sometimes we'd work with vendors who would just do the job. They'd do the brief, they do it really well, and then they'd be out of the door, as we say in Ireland, out the gap. They would be gone, right? And that's okay, because that's all they were paid for. What I try and do is to be a little bit more bespoke and personalized, and really sort of focus on the human aspect of, well, how can I make sure this works for you and in your environment? And I always saw my nana doing that with her team, because again, if you think back, she was kind of quite different. She all the people who worked alongside her, leading other teams in the retail, in like a big market. And they were all men. So, in terms of like, her approach was often deemed as soft. But in actual fact, she got the hard results. And that's how I try and partner and hold my clients accountable. I say, let's be personal. Let's get to what matters to you, as opposed to just say an off the shelf something that might work for another company. But we also need commitment, and we need to get people showing up. And that's the reality. That's like the hard line. If you want these results, we do this together. And I think she always wasn't afraid or shied away from those tough conversations. And
that's awesome.
A bit of that from here as well.
And going back to when you were talking about, I suppose inspirational, maybe observational, seeing bad managers. It's funny because a few of the conversations I've had on other podcasts, and I've asked that same question, so many people have turned around and said, well, actually, I've looked at the bad managers and I've learned from them, because what I've learned from them is those are the elements I'm not going to bring into what I do. But then you also have to raise the question, what's the perception of a bad manager? Because that bad manager could potentially be an amazing manager. It's just that you don't see them as being a good manager, because they're making you work hard, because they're making you graft, because they're making you meet expectations or project times or whatever by a certain date, and they're not giving you any freedom to extend it. Some people would say, well, yeah, they don't understand the realities of life. But then it's about that perception of a bad manager is, hang on, when I think back and look back at that person, they taught me this, they taught me this, they taught me discipline, they taught me time management, they taught me respect. I'm going to move on to my next question for you, in fact, Sam. What would you say is a belief that you hold dear to you that others might sort of disagree with?
So I thought long and hard about this in terms of like, what does leadership mean to me? And I think, and again, I think people will disagree, leadership isn't necessarily a job title or a promotion. It's like a choice you make. So when I'm coaching women, for example, I have a little play on words with the word leadership, and I use lead hership. So I put an H in it. And for me, I think about what are the behaviors that you need to display, whether you're a leader or not, by the way. If you're, and again, I'm using the women phrase for the moment, just because I thought that as an example, that would help you portray yourself as a leader. What does leadership mean to you? Like, how do you need to show up in the rooms? How do you need to conduct yourself? How do you want to feel when you're in these different types of situations? And how do you want to succeed? And what type of things do we need to do to get there? Now, that's regardless of what role they have or whether they're looking for a promotion or not. Same applies to others, by the way. I just wanted to share that as an example. And the reason why I think that others might disagree is that, we hand people often a leader title, or we promote them. We assume that it confers capability. And like with me, I was one of the top salespeople at the time. I got promoted, and they were like, "Oh, Sam will be a good manager." No, I figured it out, but there was no transition plan. The development was poor. And then sometimes, if that continues, we're kind of shocked that there's impact on team and performance. So the belief that sort of people push back on this is that a lot of leadership is almost like, well, you know what to do because you do the things as an individual contributor.
Yeah.
And also, that leadership, you don't have to be having that title to show up as a leader.
Yeah.
So for me, I think you don't have to be promoted to be a leader. You don't have to have that title, but it's more about how you hold yourself, how, as you were saying before, that, the fundamentals, I call them the brilliant basics, like, showing up on time, doing your best, being collaborative, being coachable. I mean, that's a great leadership quality. If you're very, closed off to feedback and coaching, you're going to really struggle to develop.
Yeah.
And so often leadership is mixed up because, especially in bigger companies, there's these really massive convoluted titles where people are like, oh, they're at some leader level 3 or whatever. Well, when you actually look at them as an individual, they might not be showing as a leader as maybe somebody who's on their team, for example.
Yeah, that's true. What amazes me when I do watch certain programs, and I will name The Apprentice, is that when they choose who the project manager is going to be, everyone else sort of steps back and says, "Okay, so I'm not the leader. I'm not the leader now." It's like, hang on a second. Just because you're not the project manager, just because you don't have the title, doesn't mean to say that you can't put yourself forward and have your opinions heard. And it doesn't have to be argumentative. It can be a conversation, but it's about putting your ideas forward or your arguments forward and your opinions forward so people can hear them. And I agree with what you're saying, that it's not a title, but it's something that you learn. And when you go to certain corporations, the titles are never leader of. I mean, I think the only leader title we have is a team leader.
Right.
Apart from that, you've got assistant managers, you've got vice presidents, but there's no leadership title as such yet. We still take on that mantle of, well, I'm the leader of this team and therefore this is what I'm going to. So you've got two choices. You either become a dictatorial leader that nobody likes, perception, nobody likes, or you become that leader that people can actually come to and challenge you and listen to you, but at the same time, you can challenge them and listen to them and, have that opportunity of not having a hierarchical approach, but having this flat culture where everyone can see what everyone's doing. And when someone needs that support and help, a true leader will say, okay, all hands on deck to that department. And it's not about putting blame culture forward. It's about saying, okay, we've learned from that. What have we learned? How do we make it right? And I think that's where true leadership comes in. Pressure's a big one. And you've worked in some large corporations, and working in a large corporation, there's always pressure to meet some KPIs, targets, etc., etc. But when you stepped out of that corporate world, what sort of pressures did you start finding, and how do you deal with it?
So I had to become a different kind of leader. I will definitely say that to start with.
Give me an example. What was the leader in corporate compared to the leader at where you are with oh my god, having the light bulb moments. Creating light bulb moments.
Creating light bulb moments. So sometimes in corporate, you almost have to assume a persona for the reasons that I just said before. Like, that's why I don't agree, that leadership is like the promotion or a title. So assuming the persona, and it's not always in congruence with who you are, because you need to maybe make things happen, or you need to maybe there's politics at play, or sort of regional things at play. So that was sort of me in the corporate world.
Yeah.
when I came out into my own company, I definitely wanted to be a little bit more sort of like direct and focused, but
Mhm.
have that element of being a partner, as I mentioned before,
Yeah.
from a service perspective. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was that I wanted to be able to do some of the things that I wasn't able to do in corporate world because things move
Okay.
so fast.
Like what?
So, for example, shiny object syndrome, try and get
Uh-huh.
rid of that, right?
Yeah.
Because again, in corporate, you just be getting somewhere with a program, then we go, no, we're in a new quarter. We need to focus on this.
Sure.
Shiny object syndrome, we'd move on. Whereas now it's like, I want to help organizations almost like follow up on the next quarter with all the good stuff we
Yeah.
did this quarter before we move on to a new shiny object,
Mm.
because that's where the magic happens. And we lose momentum, and we lose the opportunity to really embed learning into performance, into changing
Mhm.
it into performance, if we don't do the follow-up, if we don't do the practice,
Yeah.
if we don't do what I call the real play instead of the role play where we put it into.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So that was one of the things that I said, if I'm going to lead my own consultancy, that's really what I want to help my
Right,
companies
okay.
do. Because you don't get the opportunity to do that in corporate because you are
Yeah.
on to the next thing. It is very much shiny object
And
syndrome.
that's
So
bringing in your own personal values into how you want to operate as well, and what, who you are as an individual, not as a corporation.
absolutely, but to try and use it as a value point. So
Uh-huh.
to help companies understand, I've been in your shoes and I've seen if you move on too quickly, or if you don't practice, or if you don't coach. And by the way,
Mm.
telling isn't coaching. So let's help you get better at actual coaching.
Yeah.
Then you're not going to get the results that you think you are, and you're going to feel as frustrated as maybe when we first started speaking. And I don't want that. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I shifted. But what came with that is the pressure to be a solopreneur.
Yeah.
So my title is CEO, Chief Everything Officer, and that's because I do everything from business development to chasing the invoices. The actual stuff that helps people's performance is quite, it's the joy to do. It's like it's
Mm.
not easy, but it's the easier bit.
Yeah.
And so where I felt pressure with that was 8 months in, I broke my leg.
Oh, okay.
And I broke my leg. I broke my leg for the second time. So I broke it a year previous, but this time I broke my femur. So the pressure was obviously on a very visceral level from
Mm.
surgery, not
Yeah.
walking, cancelling work. And then the pressure was also, how do I keep my business going and serve customers that I have?
Yeah. But it's
And
not
so
just that. There's also, sorry to interrupt, there's also the other pressure about invoicing. How are you having an income when you're not able to go out to work, and you've made that choice of starting up your own business, and then this happens?
Right. So for me, that was digging into those, like I said, those brilliant basics from earlier in my career.
Mm.
So like consistency. So once I got to a point where I could do something, even though it was at home from my sofa, it was like,
Yeah.
how can I be consistent? How can I show up? It was
Yeah.
around resilience. So like,
Excellent.
how
Yeah.
can I sort of master my mindset and sort of take something good from every day, even though,
Mhm.
I'm physically in a lot of pain, and frustratingly, I had to teach myself to walk again.
Yeah.
Things like, the values based, how can I make sure that I am showing myself and holding
Uh-huh.
myself in as much high regard as I am trying to keep my clients and sort of hold
Of
them in the high regard
course.
too. And so for me, leadership took on a whole new level
Mhm.
when, unfortunately, in a way that I didn't expect. And but at the same time, some of the lessons that I had learned from earlier in my career really helped me, stand. And like my business was 3
Yeah.
last month, so that's like,
Excellent.
it tells me that the things that I have done and the
Yeah.
things I've done differently since when I was in corporate
Uh-huh.
are the right things, and hopefully they will continue to get me where I want to go.
Let me move on to the next question, Sam. It's the last question for today, which is about honest conversations, and you've been really honest and open and transparent. I really appreciate that. So my next question is about something you've been avoiding um, for yourself, a conversation that if you were Sam talking to yourself, Sam, um, and it was about improving something that you keep putting off, what would that something be, and why you keep putting it off?
So
Just one thing.
the big thing for
Yeah.
me is, as I just mentioned, the business was 3 last month.
Mhm.
So now my big challenge is scale. It's
Right.
like,
Scaling up.
how do I help it scale? Because
Mhm.
because I've done the things that I just talked about, they're really values led.
Mm.
I don't want to do tick box training. I don't want to do the shiny object syndrome, all those things.
Yeah.
And I'm really focused on stuff that moves human behavior, not just develop skills. I'm really
Mhm.
proud of that, and I'll keep doing that.
Yeah.
But and I also I'm quite passionate about, you can probably tell. But how do I help that? How do I help myself to make that scale? Because I'm
Sure.
scared if I start, building a lot of online things or
Yeah.
what, it'll become generic. It won't be as impactful. We won't be able to, get that human
Mm.
connection.
And you become overwhelmed as well when you're trying to do all these things.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's social media, wherever you look, is only typically showing their show reel. But you're seeing the best of everybody. We did this and we've installed that and we're having 6-figure this. And again, I come from a sales background, so I'm quite competitive as well. So I think the honest conversation I've probably been putting off is whether I'm protecting myself against my quality of work over the quantity and kind of
Right.
sticking to that values-led business, or whether I'm still a little bit new level, new devil, and I've not quite got
Right.
myself up there to go, I'm actually capable of growing it. And I don't know if I've answered that yet.
Okay. So when do you think you could sit down with yourself and have that conversation? Who around you could actually give you support in trying to put those sort of jigsaw pieces into place?
But I've actually recently signed up with a business coach for this
Excellent.
very reason. And
Fantastic.
for me, it's about holding the mirror up for me and asking the tough questions and helping me sort of bridge that gap of where
Yeah.
I potentially feel that I am now, or maybe show me that there isn't actually a gap there. It is just a little
Mm.
bit of new level, new devil.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of uncertainty that comes with that. If I look at facts, I've done well so far, and I've come through a lot so far,
Mm.
including my leg.
Yeah.
And where I think about where I started in my career.
Yeah.
I didn't take the traditional route and go to university first. I did everything that I did at night, and I paid for it myself and all of that kind of. So my
Yeah.
track record's fairly good. So if I looked at fact over feeling, I'm fairly solid. But
Uh-huh.
sometimes it's difficult to do that when you're in it.
Yeah.
So having somebody to help me hold up that mirror and hold me accountable, I think is going to be really good, because that is the next thing for me. It's between 3 and 5 years now. What does growth look like for Sam? What does growth look like for Creating Lightbulb Moments? So that I
Yeah.
can help more people have them, because that's all I want to do.
I
So
literally wrote that down as you said. Well, I've got myself a business coach. And I was going to make a point that, what we forget sometimes is that, we are consultants, we are salespeople, facilitators, we're trainers, but we're running our own small companies, and we still need that support. We still need to go to other people to get that support back as well. But I'm just going to say to you, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And for anyone that would like to learn more about how you can help them and how Creating Lightbulb Moments can support them, how can they get in touch with you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I hang out there regularly. So I'm Samantha Lancashire. And you'll know it's me because I have FLPI, which is Fellow of the Learning and Performance Institute, just after my name. So you'll know it's me. Or you can find me on creatinglightbulbmoments.com. And I'm also on Instagram with the same handle.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'll make sure that everyone can see all that information, and anyone listening on podcasts, I'll put it into the descriptions for all of you as well. But as for today's Becoming the Leader in You podcast, I'd like to say thank you for watching or listening. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe so that you don't miss any of these great episodes. And from me, keep growing, keep leading, but most importantly, become the leader in you. I've been Jay Acharya, and my guest was Samantha Lancashire. Thank you.
Thanks.